me. I suppose I need to hold up my side of the bargain. I said I'd show you somewhere new, didn't I? Are you still interested in joining me in checking off an outing on my own goal list? Definitely, there's no way I'm letting you off the hook. Fantastic, in that case, we'll need to return to the neighborhood. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. My name is Death by Pony. Today we're hopping back into our life. So without further ado, let's hop in. Thank you for the compliment. You could always join me as well if you wanted. I'm a vital asset to society, I know. It was honestly kind of cute how impressed he was. Could I not click the wrong buttons, please? Your chest felt a little tighter at the thought. How many people did he show this side of himself to? It made you feel special somehow. He chuckled once more and shook his head, and then the conversation moved on. And then you were struck by the most obvious idea in the world. You were on a shopping street, window shopping with a tourist. Baxter needed to get a souvenir on this day in Sunset Bird. No, you would buy him... No, you would buy him a souvenir. Baxter, you should pick something out. This is the best place for a souvenir. We're gonna get him a souvenir. You pursued the displays with purpose, rather than passively observing them. What would a fitting memento of your town, and would Baxter Ward actually like it? You considered those criteria carefully. Decided to get him postcard, shot glass mug, t-shirt, shell picture, mini carved driftwood statue. Feel like the necklace. Julie was bright and silver chain with black stones strung across it. It had lobster claws clasp that opened smoothly. It would work with his usual style, you determined. He'd wear a little piece of this town as part of his day-to-day life. It was satisfying finding something that worked so well. You went to purchase it discreetly. When you returned to Baxter's side, his excitable expression curved into something more typical for him. What did you find? Here, it's your obligatory souvenir. It's yours now. You offered him the plastic pouch containing the recently bought necklace. He graciously accepted it. Thank you, James. You're too kind. Before he opened it to examine what it was, he paused. I'm going to wait. Huh? I don't want to experience everything good right now. Then there'll be nothing left. I can have this joy later. Though, don't worry. I'll be sure to open this while you're watching, perhaps at the end of this outing. Oh, all right. It's your gift. Open it whenever you'd like. Thank you once again. You walked away from the shop side by side with successful purchase swinging between you. When Baxter was gone, he'd only have to look at the necklace to recall his days there. And you wandered back to the man beside you, who you still hardly knew. The one you had so little time to know. Where are you from? I was wondering what your family's like. So it's with the black and white thing? You're single, right? Where's he from? I'm curious. Baxter put his hands casually in his pockets, and his gaze wandering out over the crowds, the ocean, and off into the distance. Well, in the most immediate sense, I suppose you could say I came here from Virginia. That's where my college is located, after all. But of course, I know that's not entirely what you meant. I'm merely teasing. While I might study in Virginia, I'm actually from proverbial Oregon Trail, born and bred. That's the state where my home is, if you can believe it. Oh, Oregon, that's not far at all. Virginia, though, not so much. Grew up pretty close by then. How do you like it back in Virginia? Is it hard living away from where you grew up? Do you miss it? What's his hometown like? I don't know if I got around to asking where in Oregon you're from specifically. Right, I suppose I hadn't named the place yet. It's a little town called Golden Grove. You likely wouldn't have heard of it. Sure enough, you couldn't say you knew anything about the place. Name kind of rang a bell, though. What's a name like that? With a name like that, I bet you 20 I can guess what the local scenery is like. Baxter smiled with all his teeth. Of course, there's only one thing that springs to mind, isn't there? It's built on the slope of a mountain and surrounded on all sides by woodland. In the fall, the whole area shines with golden and orange patina of leaves. You almost forgot any other colors existed. No wonder they call it something so literal. It does make the place sound grander than it is, though. In truth, it's a small town, though not quite as tiny as Sunset Bird. You can easily stroll the length of this area. In Golden Grove, you at least want a bike or similar to make the trip, though some locals do take the walk. It's quite sleepy corner of Oregon where hardly anyone comes or goes. You either move to the area to settle down, you live there all your life to begin with. My ancestors fell into the former category, myself the latter. You've left now, though. I have indeed. I guess I bucked the trend in more ways than one. That certainly made sense. You'd first met Baxter. He seemed like the kind of guy to always be making waves in some kind or another. Something about the way he said that made you think he meant something else by it, though. When since like that, you'd have turned a few heads. The person I like must have sat. Feel place there. The style. Baxter raised an eyebrow in a look of mock surprise. Owing to my monochrome predilections, you mean? No, while my sense of dress might not be in keeping with the local environment, that's not quite what I meant. He hummed thoughtfully and tapped his chin with a forefinger, trying to find precisely the right words. After a moment's pause, he continued, "You'd have to understand this is a small rural town. A fair number of the residents are working class. There are some more affluent areas.
To be honest,
I suppose you could say that my family has a reputation in those parts as of the local people of means, or perhaps to put it more vulgar terms." You loaded? He snapped his fingers. Precisely, and for better or worse, everyone knows it. If you were to go there and pass my name around, anyone would know who you were talking about. He gave you a meaningful look as he said this. Please don't actually do that. It might embarrass even me. You got the sneaking suspicion that it wasn't really his own fluster he was concerned about. He waved a hand with great indifference, as if to lazy swat his own words out of the air. You figured that this was all he felt he was saying on the subject. If I'm ever in town, I promise I won't throw your acclaimed name around.
Very well.
Thank you. You needn't go out of your way on my account. Although if you ever are in the area, his smile took on an air of boyish amusement. I'm not planning on being in Golden Grove anytime soon, but all the same, I get the feeling I might not be long before I meet you there. One way or another, who can say? With that, his voice trailed off. His gaze drifted to the middle distance of the contemplation. You grew up close by then? How do you like it back in Virginia? Is it hard living away from where you grew up? How do you like living in Virginia? I'd say I enjoy being there most part. As you can probably imagine, it's quite different from here or back home in Oregon, especially the humidity. Everything seems smaller there too. In California, it's like the sky goes on forever. The mountains and the horizon are impossibly far away. Oregon as well, there's a scale to the scenery that just doesn't compare. Whereas Virginia, the hills are just that, hills rather than mountains. Quaint little things, really, and they sort of gently enfold everything. His gaze grew distant again as his mind conjured up memories of the landscape, like he was getting lost among all those quaint little hills. Although a good thing about it is the trees. Virginia has plenty of forest coverage, like Oregon, so at least in that sense, I'm among the familiar. That tracks. I think I read somewhere that something like 2/3 of Virginia consists of forest, right? 2/3. I can readily believe it. You're well informed, James. His voice took on a hushed, affectionate quality. I must confess, I have a soft spot for trees. There are these beautiful eastern white pines planted all over the college dorms, magnificent all year round. When the summer comes to a close, the needles get everywhere. They fall so thick in places that the ground around is covered with what looks like one big tan shag carpet. If you were to walk underneath any of the branches, you'd be picking needles out of your hair until Christmas. You smiled at the mental image. That must be awful for you, green and brown. Who would ruin your whole monochrome shtick? His eyes grew wide and looked mocking, a look of mocking indignation. You have no idea. All that considered and careful selection wasted. Though of course I have brown eyes, so I like to think I can make it work if it comes down to it. But you'd rather not have to make that sacrifice, right? A short, sharp grin.
Absolutely.
You know me so well. Something about the way he said that made your stomach go a little funny. Baxter exhaled slowly, almost dreamily. That's another good thing Virginia and Oregon have in common. With all these trees around in the variable climate, you truly get to experience the seasons changing. Summer to fall, especially beautiful colors like you would not believe. He was about to get lost in thought again, but then he caught himself. So to finally answer your question, yes, I'd say I'd like it in Virginia a fair amount. The humidity is still a bit more her sticking point. He narrowed his eyes at a fraction as the pun rolled off his tongue without his full intending it. But at the very least, that's only an issue during the summer months, and happily for me, I spent my summer elsewhere this year. You smiled a private smile to yourself, happily for Baxter indeed. Is it hard living somewhere other? Do you miss it? Baxter nodded, not in agreement, but as if he'd been anticipating your question. He answered almost before you'd finished speaking. No. It was said so instantaneously and with such a genuine smile that you were rather taken aback. You weren't expecting such candid answer at that. It's like he didn't have to think about it. Seeing your momentary look of surprise, Baxter expression softened to something more demure. Maybe he had this reaction before, maybe many times. It's not so bad as it sounds. At a minimum, I can honestly say I wish I missed it, if that makes sense. You guess you could understand that. I don't know how you feel about your hometown particularly, but you should at least be able to appreciate that I spent all of my youth there. I'm not so jaded as to totally discount the place, far from it. But anything I liked about my home wasn't exactly exclusive to that local. The U.S. is a big country, and there are plenty of beautiful things to see wherever you go. I've experienced enough to know that much, at least. His voice took a tone of polite finality. No, not harsh, simply matter of fact. So no, I don't miss it, and I won't be going back. When my parents wish to see me, they'll have to be the ones visiting where I am. He snorted gently to himself. The idea amused him greatly. You got the feeling that he was enjoying a private joke at his family's expense that could be one of the things you'd ask about later if he was willing to divulge. His feelings surprised you, but you respected them. His life was his own to live, and yet thinking about your own life experience compared with his made you feel a little sad. You couldn't imagine turning your back on Sunset Bird so easily, not after all you'd been through here. Thanks for telling me.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. I'm flattered that you've taken an interest in my background. Normally, I wouldn't talk so much about myself, although lately something has me spilling my feelings left and right. In any case, if you care to indulge me with your questions, I suppose we are both winners in the end. From there, you and Baxter continued poking around until he'd browsed every shop on the path. He even doubled back around, leading you all the way across again for a second glance. Despite the short length, it was easy to miss something even after a dozen passes through, because the area was so packed. But Baxter, satisfied that going through twice, he came to a halt at the end of the path, his attention leaving the shops and landing on you. Thank you once more for showing me this place and for the gift. He held up the bag with the souvenir safely hidden inside. This truly has been a fantastic stop on my California sightseeing extravaganza. He inclined his head gracefully. The shopping street was officially a hit. It was nothing. Glad it didn't disappoint. I'm not sure it's really that exciting. You give a thumbs up. You tried. Glad it didn't disappoint you. Nothing is this charming could ever disappoint me. I suppose I need to hold up my side of the bargain. I said I'd show you somewhere new, didn't I? Are you still interested in joining me in checking off an outing on my own goal list? Definitely, there's no way I'm letting you off the hook. Fantastic. In that case, we'll need to return to the neighborhood. He sauntered off in the correct direction before clarifying what his plan was, leaving you trailing behind him. With your brain abuzz all over the place, he couldn't possibly be taking you mentally said goodbye to your old friend, the shopping street. He made it back to Baxter's rented condo, climbed into his also rented car. He brought up the directions on his phone, though was careful not to let you catch a glimpse of the destination. He didn't even give you a hint. Then Baxter slipped his phone into the car handle slot for future reference and began to drive. You relaxed in your seat, having gotten used to being there already, and attempted to puzzle out where he was actually taking you. He was in good mood, but any attempt at asking about his plan resulted in increasingly coy answers. After how many questions of yours he'd been answering, it was funny to have him suddenly act as if he'd never heard the concept of sharing information with another person. If you didn't push it, inevitably the veil of secrets would be removed. You only had to be patient. However, when you finally turned into a parking lot, you admitted it was not what you had been expecting. Even if you didn't know what to expect, it was still something you wouldn't have guessed in a million years. On the top of the spacious building was a human-sized white pin. The place he wanted to go sightseeing was a bowling alley. Baxter led you to the entryway on air-light feet, even from where you could hear the clattering of normal-sized pins getting knocked down, cutting into the disco tunes playing in the background. Oh my god! Look at it! This looks just like, where was it? I just went there with some friends for, his husband's birthday. Big Al's. It reminds me of Big Al's. Because that is the nicest bowling alley I have gone to. Because most of the time when I go, they have like the cheap seats and things. But they had actual like couches and stuff. And that was a fun time. The front desk was advertised rates for paying per game versus per hour. Along the wall, a tower of shelves held dozens of shoes and all sorts of sizes, and past that were shining alleys.
All right.
Here we are. He was content as if bowling was his sole need to find peace. Yeah, I've been to a bowling alley before, right? I'm sorry, this isn't new. I've been bowling before. As you know, I've never gone bowling. Bowling alley isn't what most people think as sightseeing. This is normal Monday night stuff. Sightseeing is all about the sights you want to see. You glanced at sparkling floor, walls, balls, and even couches. It was certainly a sight. Personally, I've never been bowling in my life. Baxter! Never? I wanted to try it for longer than I can remember, and well, what better opportunity than when I'm on vacation? Yeah, I guess. Would it be so much stranger to try it whilst I live my regular life? The life that I must remind you had never had bowling in it before? I would be entirely unexplainable. Here I'm a tourist doing new stuff as part of my job description. I mean, I won't argue with that logic. It's okay to have some fun at home too. Maybe I should pretend to be a tourist too if they can do whatever they want. No one likes a tourist who acts as if real life doesn't matter on vacation. Not acceptingly. I mean, I won't argue with that logic. It was too entertaining an argument, and there was nothing wrong with him wanting to have his fun now. Hanging out with Baxter, seeing firsthand he was living, you were compelled to ask yourself, had you really done everything you wanted to? You were reminded of the fact that your time in Sunset Bird, its own limits, and you could very well be reaching the end of that line soon. This would be the last summer you had before becoming an adult, before taking your first step into everything that lay beyond. Sometimes, lying awake in bed at night, you would feel the tension like a bubble in your chest, the worry, the excitement, the anticipation of what that future might hold. Before that, how could you make the most of what you remained? You weren't sure how to answer those questions, but in the current occasion at least, you didn't have the chance to ponder them further. Baxter chimed in again. Your train of thought evaporated.
So?
Since we're on the subject, James, have you ever done this before? Bowling, I mean. No, never. No, I guess I've done it once or twice. I've bowled before. Sure, I've done some bowling. I've bowled before. I see, but have you been to this particular bowling alley? I know it's quite new. What? You glanced at the sparkling floors and walls and even the couches. It certainly was recently made. Not a thing had any sign of wear or tear, and none of it was familiar. No, I haven't been. Baxter smirked victorious.
See?
So I did bring you somewhere you'd never seen before. All right, you tried. I'll give you this one. Thank you. I'll take what I can get. Now then, should we get in line? They seem to be popular today, or perhaps this is considered a slow day. I have no bias of comparison. But we might be waiting for Elaine. It's all right. Two of you joined the queue at the counter. Though the bowling alleys were indeed full, you got your booking and were handed rental shoes for when the opening came. Baxter flashed you a charming smile and insisted on paying. Since you were so generous as to gift me a keepsake, fine, I paid my spot. I guess you can at yours. Exactly. You laced up your shoes for a sec, and then it was in terms of finishing preparations. There was time aplenty to kill before your round would begin. Well, since you were here, what's your family like? So what's up with the black and white thing? What's with the black and white thing? He looked down at his outfit and shrugged.
Hmm?
I don't think of it as being so much a thing. Black and white happen to be my favorite colors. Come on, no one else is going around in two-tone looks every day of their life. You even dyed your hair to match. You even did it when we were to the beach. It's totally a thing. Baxter quietly absorbed your words with a wry smile, clearly more amused than embarrassed for all that he'd just downplayed. He totally owned the strange quirk of this character. Alright, I admit, one could say I'm rather dedicated to the aesthetic as a whole. I came to it gradually, though I have some level of affection for black and white ever since I was a small child. Everyone who knew me back then could have told you as much. I was very forthright and outspoken about my preferences, as a child can often be. But it wasn't until a few years ago that I made the conscious decision to align my fashion choices with that underlying attachment. Damn, Baxter. It was around then I came to understand how clothing could be an expression of your personality, a way of showing yourself to the world. I wanted to make a statement, you could say, so I started experimenting with more grayscale looks and began selectively tailoring my wardrobe around the limited palette. To start with, like most people, I had associated black and white with more formal tastes and styles, tuxedos, dinner suits, tailcoats, and the like. But as I looked further beyond my own social group, I found a diverse range of alternative subcultures which drew upon the monochrome theme. There was a lot of appeal for me there as well. I ended up adapting many of them into my own personal sense of taste.
So?
The rest, as they say, is history. That actually made a lot of sense now that it was all laid out in front of you. It was like that one small choice early on had snowballed, gathering momentum as time went on and now formed a core part of who he was. But if that were the case, then one question remained. So what made you like black and white in the first place as a kid, I mean? Oh, that? He leaned in closer and playfully threaded his fingers together under his chin. Can you guess? What? It wasn't like him to beat around the bush. The fact that he was choosing to toy with you a little about what this was not what you'd prepared for. Those are standard formal colors. You must love zebras. You may be a fan of black and white movies. Are you too much for grown-up for full coloring? No idea. Black and white movies? Am I? He raised his brow incredulously. I might as well ask you whether Clark Gable had a mustache. Of course, does that mean I'm right then? You snickered, appreciating his joke. You said blanket. Everybody knows that. Aren't you a man of culture? I've really met my match with you, James. You are correct in that sense that I have penchant for historical movies, but that's not the reason I like black and white, I'm afraid.
See?
I'll try and make it easier for you. The crux of the matters is, why do I Baxterboard like colors black and white so much? His voice took on strange quality, placing a lot of emphasis on certain words. He was obviously trying to guide your thought process. His voice took on a strange quality, placing a lot of emphasis on certain words. He was obviously trying to guide your thought process here, but you couldn't quite work it out. Black and white. Baxterboard, black and white. No way, no way. His your initials? He grinned from ear to ear, the punchline finally revealed, a face of sheer delight. You got it. Brilliant, isn't it? And I have to give you credit for you managed to see the picture without every piece of the puzzle. The truth is, my full name is Baxter Alexander Ward. 3 out of 3. He rested his chin in his hands and beamed at you, the very picture of smugness. You'd hardly seen him this counted in all the time you'd known him. That's such a perfect coincidence. I can't believe that's the reason. But why would that cause such a lifelong obsession? That's adorable. Baxter just giggled boyishly at your response and swept his fingers idly through his bangs. I confess, as a child, I came to believe that black and white had to be part of my identity as soon as I realized how well it coincided with my own name. It felt almost like magic. In a way, names carry power and importance. Kids love those kinds of coincidences, and it's part of the mystery of youth. Magic, huh? You were reminded of something that happened earlier. Is that why you reacted when I mentioned the amazing Alexander? Because it's your middle name?
Good.
Ah, well spotted. That's correct again. You could say I wish to be an amazing Alexander in my own right. I've always been fond of my full name. Very nice name. I like it too. It suits you to a T. Thanks for sharing with me. The smile is contagious. I like it too. I'm so delighted that we're in accord. At any rate, I'm sure you can understand at the last why I am so attached to it and my favorite colors. You certainly did. Who knew such a simple question would lead to such a strange, unexpected answer? In the past few minutes, you'd ended up learning much more than you bargained for about the hidden depths of Baxter Ward. The conversation has successfully filled the waiting period, and the attendant suddenly called you over. The lane was free. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, remember to hit like. That way I know you're enjoying the videos I'm making. Remember to subscribe. That way YouTube brings you back here to see what's next. And I won't take up any more of your time. Have a good day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.